Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Flight Training the Way I See It. This is the July 2023 edition, and it is the last day of July. Actually, tomorrow is the last day of July, so today is the 30th. So 31st, I'll be on my way to New Jersey. Anyway, this show is all about opinion, flight training news, and stories, and we've got always some pro tips for you at the end. So we're going to cover, in about 20 minutes, we're going to cover some really important things, two important things in particular. It has to do with LSAs, light sport aircraft, and what's happening there. There's a big change coming, so you want to stick around for that. And we're going to cover first-time pass rates and what's happening there, the report back from industry. And we'll have 3 pro tips for you. If you want a hard copy of our video newsletter, which we produce in PDF form, you can go to our website, CFI-bootcamp.com, and you'll find a way to log in or sign up for that. Also, we do a power hour every Saturday from noon until 1, and it's a live show, and it's about 1 hour deep dive on something. And we've done 145 of them, if you can believe that. 145 shows, and they're everything from marketing 101 for flight instructors to the purpose of 8-some pylons and the mathematics behind it, if some were curious about that. What the Chandelle and Lazy 8, why they're in the utility category in the Cessna 172 N model placards, and why they're not really Chandelles or Lazy 8s anymore. We've done things on every proposed legal interpretations. We've done things about FARs. I mean, every imaginable thing is there. So that's the power hour. It's live and it's free from 12 to 1 Eastern on Saturdays, except for holidays. And you can go to our website, CFIBootcamp.com. There's a red bar that comes across the top, and that's what you click on to get there. For those of you who want to know how to get previous editions of the power hours, you have to join our membership site, but it's not pricey. So what I would say to do is, if you go and try to join it on our website, cfbootcamp.com, it's $22 a month, which is a little bit. But if you are a power hour subscriber, you'll get a copy of the outline of every time we do a power hour, and there's an offer in there for $9 a month. So if you can do that, that's probably a little better for you. Okay, so let's get the show started, and let's talk about light sport aircrafts are about ready. Light sport airplanes are about ready to get a significant upgrade. Now, I've been waiting this for a long time because the sport pilot certificate, yes, it took off, but it didn't take off anything like they really wanted it to. Way better than recreational, I got to say. But the FAA published a notice proposed rulemaking, NPRM, in the Federal Register, and what they're doing, it's under a committee or an act within FAA called MOSAIC, Modernization of a Special Airworthiness Certificate. So if you don't know what this means, it means that light sport aircraft are not certificated under Part 23 of the FAR. So they can't hold a standard airworthiness certificate. They're certificated under a consensus standard, and so that's an industry standard. So they're issued a special airworthiness certificate, which could have limitations on it, right? That the standard wouldn't. So that's still staying. But what they did when they originally designed this light sport stuff is they made the maximum weight 600 kilos, and that was dependent. The reason for that was because of the stall speed. That the maximum stall speed was pretty low that they put in there. Well, now they're going to change all that. The proposal is to increase the stall speed and increase it enough to allow this to happen. Are you ready? The FAA was saying these airplanes are kind of spindly. They're kind of not very robust. And if you've ever had them in a training environment, certain ones will last because they put a lot of time and effort into the landing gear system and the parts that kind of give way. But 600 kilos isn't a lot. That's 1,340 about pounds. That's not a lot of weight. That's not even a 152. So what these people had to do, the manufacturers had to do, is skimp, right? So instead they have no insulation, right, because that costs weight, so it's going to be noisy. As flimsy as we can make things that don't matter, let's do that. And so they're just not that robust. And so anyway, the FAA said, okay, we're going to change that. And so they did. So they're doing it right now. And so what they're doing is they're increasing that stall speed, which is going to, allow airplanes up to about the size, well, up to and including the size of a 172, Archers, Cessna 172, Archers, Diamond DA-40s, and many more are going to be able to be used and flown by sport pilots. This is a significant change because the aircraft was always the limiting factor within that license of people getting it or not. Initially, it was to satisfy, I don't need a medical, and I can't get one, so let's do a sport thing. And then it was like, okay, let's give this a try and see how many of them fall out of the sky. Well, it didn't happen. Same with basic med. So what that's going to do is it's going to allow new airplanes to be designed as an LSA that are more robust. So if the manufacturers want to start putting more things in there, shoring them up, the current designs they can. If they want to make new ones, they'll be able to make bigger and badder ones, right? So I suppose or would think that the LSA manufacturers, current ones who have airplane on the market, aren't going to be terribly thrilled with this whole idea with the current models, because now they're going to have competition from other models, and who's going to want to buy those little tiny things unless their price is really, really super low. So that may help with the price point, but that's about what I see. So anyway, this could also help the CFI shortage in a way. Did you know that a sport pilot can become a sport pilot flight instructor if they have a sport pilot certificate and 150 hours with some types of time in there, 25 hours across country, some things of that nature in there? They don't need an instrument rating, and they don't need a commercial pilot certificate. Wow. Before, not very useful because they could only fly LSAs, right? And no one's really flying those, so we couldn't really use them in a flight training side of things other than for sport pilots. But now, because a rule passed about a number of years ago that said that sport pilot training from a sport pilot flight instructor can count towards a private pilot certificate. When that law changed, that became very interesting to me, because all we needed then was the airplane to get bigger, right? If we could get that, we could use sport pilots to go through the process, train all the way up to sport pilot certificate, and then if the student wanted to change their mind and become a private pilot, well, they could, and they have the airplane to do it. They just have to do a little bit more training and do some training with a authorized instructor under Part 61 that's not a sport pilot instructor. So I think that could help. And also the nice thing about that, if you think about the business model for that, is that I could employ those pilots at a school, and they would spend somewhere around 15, 20 grand to get through sport pilot certificate and to get their sport pilot instructor certificate, and then a little bit more, maybe another 10 or so to get the additional up to 150 hours that they need. And then as soon as they get that, so now normally in order to be a flight instructor, you'd be spending around minimum $60,000 to $85,000 of your own money before you even become a flight instructor, right? Because you have to have private, instrument, commercial, and CFI, right? So this person is going to be able, for about a quarter of the money, is going to be able to start working, right, and getting paid to fly and pay for those other ratings, or help pay for some of those other ratings. I mean, that's pretty significant. So I think that is very attractive, and I think that's a real benefit, something we can use as in industry. I think we'd welcome that. People would say, well, it's not enough time, how would you? Well, I'm here to tell you, it didn't take a genius to teach someone how to fly. You can do it, and the rest of the world recognizes that. When I was an instructor in England, you needed to have a private pilot certificate and go through a flight instructor course and have 150 hours, and you could teach flying. And they weren't dropping all the skies. It just wasn't happening. There's no significant difference between 150 hours and 200 or 250 hours, not really. The commercial pilot certificate doesn't add a lot. There's not a lot of, it's tighter tolerances on some things, okay, big deal. There's some maneuvers that none of the rest of the world does, like Chandel's lazy eights that you'll never use in your life before. Eights on pilots for anything practical. Well, eights on you could. I'll tell you about that later. But there's that, and then there's an instrument rating which has nothing to do with teaching someone how to fly an airplane VFR. Those are just qualifications to get the CFI. So I think the rest of the world figured this out a long time ago, and we're just coming up to it. But we don't want to change the whole thing. We say, well, we'll just change it for the sport pilot side, and I think that's not a bad idea. And if you don't believe it's easy to teach, or not easy to teach people to fly, but you can do it. If I went with you in an airplane, you're a private pilot, and I gave you instruction from the right seat, got you safe so you could fly from the right seat, then spin training with you to make sure if anything bad happened, you'd be all right to recover and to not let it happen in the first place. If I did that with you, and that's all I did, I didn't cover any of the fundamental instructing with you, I didn't cover anything, I just let you loose, and I said, go train someone how to fly. You'd be able to do it. You just would. You need 15 hours of time, probably like we do in CFI boot camp around that, and you'd be cut loose and away you go, right? And you'd be able to do it. So after you do it for a while, you get better at it, that's for sure. But you don't need 250, 300 hours. In fact, in some Part 141 schools, one of the best flight instructors we ever made was Ryan. Ryan was from Curacao in the Caribbean, and he finished his commercial at 165 hours, 160, something like that. And he came to us as a CFI applicant, and he was a rock star, and he's currently teaching people how to fly. And currently, I guess he's working for Caribbean Airlines now. So at any rate, he did a really fine job with that. So there's proof positive that can happen. And the extra 100 hours really doesn't mean a lot. 100 hours of the pattern, 100 hours, I don't know, doesn't mean a lot to me. But anyway, there's that. That's just to let you know. So that's coming. So let's see what happens over the next a few months on that. So that's my update to you on the NPRM, Notice Proposed Rulemaking, which you can find right now. You can comment on it if you want to, if you can find it. I don't have the site for it, but it was in a copy of what's called Aviation Brief from AOPA that I get every day. It was also in Flying Magazine, their email. So you'll find it if you just Google NPRM LSA, Light Sport Airplane, you'll find it. And then you can comment and read the comments. Okay, let's talk about something nasty, bad, right? The pass rates for almost all ratings are down, especially for private pilots. This has been happening over the past 1 to 2 years. And I know why. Well, I don't know exactly why, but I've got some factor that I want to talk about. And then we can mutually, collectively think about how we can solve the issues. But it's going to take a village to do it. So everybody in our industry is a little jittery over the first-time pass rates, and they're dropping, right? No one has proposed an absolute reason, but there's several contributing factors that exist. Now, the pass rates are down around, for the private pilot, used to be about 80%, 75, 80% first-time pass. That's down about 15 points. And the instant rating's down, the commercial's down a little bit, CFI is down a little bit, not a little bit, they're all in that 10 points more spread margin. And there's some reasons for it. So I wanted to talk to you, or give you some updates, and let you think about what we can do to change that. So the first thing, I think the first factor is the current experience of the overall flight instructor workforce, right? So if you don't know this, about 80% of the CFI's training students today have less than 2 years of experience, 80%, right? Only 20% have more than 2 years. And there's not a lot of people out there teaching people to fly. It's a relatively low number. So in the 10,000 region, 20,000 region, in this region, right? So as most of you know, you get your CFI by demonstrating you can fly safely to a standard from the right seat. That's the first thing you got to be able to demonstrate. And then you can also be able to demonstrate that you can talk through a maneuver, you can teach something, you can use the radio, all of that without missing a beat. That's basically it. So now there's a big disconnect between what happens after the test is passed and in the real world of instructing, right? So the test is not a very good representation of how to teach a student anything, because the test is structured around, can you personally fly safely from the right seat? The second part is of that equation is, can you talk all the time through it all, so you can demonstrate that you know every piece of the maneuver, which you never do with a student. The things and then you get no training on, or very little training on, actually how to let the student make errors, right? That's covered in the FOI, but it's a statement. You know, people learn by trial and error. They do, right? That's how you learn things. You learn by trial and error. If you even take a mathematics class or whatever it is, and you just keep messing up, you just keep getting it. You look at some other references, you go back to it, and you go back and forth and back, and then eventually you get it. This is the same with flying. So we, as experienced flight instructors, know that we have to let the student have plenty of space and not be on the controls. You know, we're only on the controls when it's absolutely necessary. This is something that comes with experience. So you can buy as much flight training as you want, but you cannot buy experience. But what we can do is we can lean on mentor CFIs, and we can get you to a place and say, okay, here's basically how it goes. You don't have to be on the controls the whole time. You know, you gotta let the student have some margin. How much, we can talk about for each individual airplane, how much margin to let them have before you actually have to do something. The same with training instruments. If it's VFR, is like a G1000 is an example. I'm going to be next week up in a G1000 teaching stuff, and one of the things people do is they make mistakes, and I let them. and I'm in the simulator with them, which behaves a little bit differently than the airplane. So sometimes it doesn't load it doesn't automatically load the correct nav aid into the CDI and flip it automatically when it gets close. Sometimes the sim doesn't do that. And so I call my system trust but verify. I'm never going to let the automation just do and me follow. That's not going to happen. I'm going to trust that it's going to do it, and then I'm going to make sure at each step of the way that I verify that the right mode is engaged, the right track is there, the right front course is there, all that. Because otherwise, if I don't do that, I'm just getting instrument type rating in a G1000 and won't be able to use it in a round gauge airplane, because a round gauge airplane doesn't do that, right? It does not automatically select anything. So these are the kind of things that come from experience. So in the training you receive as a CFI is about explaining every detail as you demonstrate it in a maneuver. You pre-deliver all the common errors to the student from a lesson plan that they're likely to make, and then identify and fix them as they occur. And the examiner will say, what am I doing with here that's wrong? And you'll identify and immediately fix that. And that's not what we do in flight training. We let you make the mistake and try to figure it out yourself, and if you can't, then we help you. And that's basically it. We keep doing that until you get it. That's the idea. So for example, when I'm teaching, it could be a steep turn. If you're a flight instructor student, you will feel the necessity to say everything about a steep turn while you're doing it, every single thing, and you'll have, how long will it take you to get around the horn? Maybe 30 seconds or so before, you got 30 seconds to get it all out, because you're gonna make a 360, right? All the way around, right? And if you fly with me, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pick my battles. I'm going to see how you do it. I'll demonstrate it, and I'll see how you do it. And then from there, I'll see what areas can I get improvement on right now. What's the biggest single thing that I could fix right now? What's the most important thing? And then we'll practice that a little bit. And then we'll let you make some other mistakes, and then we'll pick another battle. We'll pick more. So in that sense, you're not overwhelmed with me talking, and you're allowed plenty of practice, and I'm coaching you through that. And I'm letting you make mistakes so you fix yours. We're not teaching that in CFI school. We're just not, right? So we need to be doing that. And so what we're creating a lot of pilots who have rote skills, right? Who've been coached and mentored so finely that they're afraid to make mistakes, or when they do, they really don't have a good recovery strategy for them. And so the fail rate's going up, and people, and of course the instructors who are teaching the student don't have a lot of experience, and so they sometimes, what I call, fly by opinion, if you know what that means. But it basically means that my instructor taught me this way, so that's the way I'm going to do it, without ever looking at the source material or the POH or anything. I just do it like I was taught to do it. And sometimes that's not right, sometimes that's wrong. So we need to be teaching that. Okay, so anyway, there's that. Now SAFE, Society of Aviation and Flight Educators, is working on a program called CFI-Pro that's addressing some of that. So the difficulty is going to be buy-in. So because new CFIs, as soon as they get their certificate, flight instructor certificate, they feel like there's something today that they weren't yesterday. So yesterday they weren't authorized to sign a logbook. They weren't authorized, but the skill set that they have is the same today when they got the certificate as it was yesterday, because there's no experience there, right? Or little experience there. So just because you have the certificate doesn't change anything. You're just where you are. So you're where you've been yesterday. So you need to get experience, or you need to get mentoring. And so CFI-Pro course and the mentoring program they have at SAFE is very good, and I think that will make a difference in the industry. So there's that. The second problem is that's not related to flight instructors, is the issue that we have a DPE shortage, or I'll call it unavailability. We probably have plenty of examiners, but a lot of them aren't doing more than 20 tests a year. So get busy, right? So this causes, when we have this availability problem, and when it takes a month or two to get a test, then skills and proficiency wane. And then the student has to, and the only way to fix that is to just keep doing recurrent proficiency flights. So now you're done. The DP says, hey, don't call me until they're ready, until they're signed off. You say, okay. You call them and say, yep, I'm out 2.5 months. Great. That's a good way to keep the factory humming, right? It's a good way to run the industry, right? So then sometimes we lie. We say, oh, they're ready, right? So anyway, what happens is the frequency, and then there's more expense. And so the student is cognizant of that. And we are too. We don't want that. And then all of a sudden, it's maybe a week or two since they've flown, or it's the day before the test. They already been signed off, and they just didn't do that well because they haven't flown for a month and half, and we let them go anyway. And then the fail rate goes. They say, well, you were signed off, so I don't think you'll make it. Then the student's like, well, but let me give it a shot. I'll wing it. This is the recreational pilot's mindset. I'll wing it. It's not a professional pilot's mindset. And that's what happens. So I think the proficiency, because we're waiting for tests for too long. So, so what do you do if you're in that space where you need a check ride soon? You feel qualified, but now do you really know? Do you know if you're good enough? So I say get with a good experienced CFI that still trains and recommends applicants for the type of test you need. So your CFI may be inexperienced, that's fine. But find a CFI who is currently active, not just someone who held a certificate for a long time and done a lot of flight training. You want a CFI who's actively training, if you're private pilots, commercial pilots, CFIs, whatever that is, and doing that a lot. And you want to get their input on that. So for example, I'll give you some names. So Rich Stoll does upset training in Southern California. He's exceptional. Patty Wagstaff does aerobatics training, exceptional. But would I go to them for a private pilot phase check? No, probably not. I wouldn't say they couldn't do it. I would just say that, there may be some things they just don't remember from the regulations that are pilot-centric towards that. But when it comes to upset training and aerobatics, do you think I wouldn't? Do you think I'd send them? Yes, all day long, right? So, yeah, so find a CFI, and SAFE can help you with that, to do those kind of evaluations in enough time to see if you're really ready, maybe fix anything that's wrong, and do that. So that's all how we can up the pass rate. So I have more to say on this as we get more data on the pass rates and the percentages of new flight instructors who are coming into the pool here. So that's that. So now I'll just wrap up here with two little things. I've got your pro tips for this month. There are 3 of them. So the first pro tip is what happens if the carbon monoxide, the CO sensor, goes off while you're in the run-up area. So the G1000s have a CO sensor built into them. So the Sentry has a CO sensor built into it, and some headsets now have that. So the obvious answer is to return to parking, but it may not be necessary. What's up? Okay, if you're one of those pilots that have a huge checklist to get through, the ones you see in the run-up area and they head down in the cockpit and doesn't come up for about 15 minutes, that one, the CO sensor may have gone off just because you're in the same spot for a long time. And the CO built up in the cockpit. Of course, don't ignore a warning. You never a warning. But maybe move the airplane around a little bit and vent the cabin. You may find out that the CO sensor goes off and kind of stays off. And you can make a quick turn in the pattern to see if that's in fact true. Right? If it makes sure it's VFR. Better yet, use a simple checklist, and then you don't have to sit in the run-up for long. I find that people have these extensive checklists, even say put the key in the ignition. I mean, if you need to be reminded of that, close the door, I don't know. There's just certain things you need to have the sense you were born with, right? So you definitely need the key. If you don't have the key, you'll go back, oh, I forgot the key, right? You wouldn't go, you don't need a checklist, say, now put it in the ignition. You don't need that, or in the ignition switch, I should say. So there's that. So I use a cigar tips checklist. I'll just run through it really quickly. And then that's a mnemonic, and then I use just the POHs in the airplane to step through it. I can verify I did it. So C is for controls, for incorrect. I is for the instruments, both the flight instruments and the engine instruments. So I. G is for gas. Select the fullest tank, the right tank, whichever tank you need, and make sure you have enough of it. A is attitude. So that means set the trim. Set the attitude for all the trimmers where they need to be set for takeoff. R is mixture rich and run up. Set cigar. And I don't have the magneto drops in there and all that because I'm just going to use the checklist for that. Because they're different for different airplanes. Mostly the same, but there are some differences. So I'm not going to put that in my mnemonic. Then T, transponder, on. I, interior doors and windows. P is position lights, including strobes if you have them. And S is seatbelts. And that covers up to the Beach Baron. To be honest, you can fly pretty much anything with that. But you need to run the regular checklist after. So if you do that, you kind of already did it, then you get lost in the checklist. A lot of times if you use checklist as a do list, you'll do something, read the checklist, do it, then go back to checklist. You skip a line. You don't even know you skipped a line. So don't do that. All right, so anyway, there's that. So anyway, the second pro tip is that's actually that was a pro tip right there. We're getting 4, okay? So if you fly an airplane with seatbelts that have inertia reels, this one's for you. So inertia reels are is the thing that causes the seatbelt to go back into position, out of the way, and as you pull it against the inertia reel, and you can snap it into position. And so you can, it's like in your car, you know, it's kind of that thing goes zip, and it pulls the seatbelt back where it belongs. Okay, but if you pull it too quickly, the inertia reel will lock, because it doesn't know the difference between you hitting something accidentally or stopping suddenly and need to be held in position, or you just pulling it too much. So if you're pulling it too much, then and too quickly, then it's going to cause it to seize up, right? So the thing also to do is if you fly a 172 S model, or it has an inertia reel, and if you get inside and you close the door before you snap the seatbelt, it's not going to work very well. You're going to be struggling, fiddling down there for it. So make sure you bring the seatbelt all the way out. You have to hold it all the way out. Pull it all the way, grab the end of it, and then click it in so the inertia reel doesn't stop you. And then before you close the door, okay? And then click, and then you can close the door. That's for 172s, okay? There's that. That's your, okay, so that's that. So if you use, third tip, if you use an EFB, like ForeFlight, electronic flight bag, always carry a battery pack with enough capacity to power the EFB, that is the iPad, for example, for as much endurance as your airplane has plus an hour. So whatever endurance you've got in the airplane, always have enough to cover that plus an hour. Never rely on the internal battery in the tablet or the accessory electric plug that's in the airplane. If you are using Century Stratus, make sure that your battery pack will cover those items too, even though they have their own batteries. Just be sure that whatever you're using, you have enough battery juice, enough power to cover for the flight plus the flight or the endurance of the airplane plus an hour. So, and not bad to even have more than one battery backup. A couple's okay. You don't need to overdo it. So those of you who buy the Brightline bags, I understand you buy the Brightline bags, and then it has 50 pockets, so you go buy 50 things to put in the 50 pockets that you don't need. And some of those would be extra battery packs, right? So there's that. So that's what I've got to say for this month. And hopefully we'll get this out today or tomorrow, which will be good. And then away we'll go with next month. And next month I'll be in New Jersey. And where else will we be? We won't have any shows coming up until November, which will be the NAFI Summit. That'll be the next one. I was invited to speak at Oshkosh, but I got the memo too late, so I couldn't go. So I did have some presentations on visual flying, which I like to do, and also had another one, how to make over $100,000 a year as a flight instructor. So that's that. So that's it for the. Thanks for tuning in, and be sure you come to our website, CFIbootcamp.com, sign up for the newsletter, and take a look at the products. We did launch a new product, right? It should be by the time you get this, or soon. It'll be Wednesday it'll be the 2nd of August that we're going to release it. It's our FOI lesson plans, and there's 3 different versions of it. There's just the lesson plans, which if you're studying for the FOI would be great, or if you're teaching it, even great too. The other is there's a second package which has that and the FOI chapter summaries, which is something I wrote, which summarizes every chapter in the Aviation Instructor's Handbook. And then the third package, which has all the goodies in it, has the lesson plans, has the chapter summaries, has a workbook, which is from our original CFI course, which goes through the FOI, all 10 chapters. And then there's the 7 hours video series that I do in the CFI online course that's stripped out and put into that package. So everything FOI is there, and you'll get an email on it, I'm sure, soon. All right, that's it, and thanks for tuning in to Flight Training the Way I See It.